Today you were telling actually you took, I mean, apparently it appeared that you took a position with the speaker before the lady, a gentleman, a young person. You had said this message is so beautiful and the essence of it. So do you do accept that there is a message being given now?
Well, seemingly in the appearance of things, there's two people speaking, but ultimately, um, it's not a personal thing. It's not my message.
Yeah, it's okay. It is not your message, but then is there a message?
There is a communication from nothing to nothing seemingly happening, but in that, there's an appearance of somebody thinking they're getting something, maybe, and somebody thinking
Uh,
they're hearing something on one side, but really this is nothing expressing itself for nobody. But there seems to be a communication happening.
there seems to be a communication, or there is a communication.
It seems to be. It always seems to be. It's never like we think it is.
But that's a, but that language is a bit not able to get a clarity on that. It seems to be a message.
Um, yeah.
Because even today you had said that to one of the speakers that there is no one here who recognizes a person across.
Yeah.
But there is, you said, a firework of sounds. I mean, there was a beautiful use of the English language. A firework of sounds happening, and the universe playing a false sort of chemical reaction trick on the human body to make it appear like it's communication.
Yeah. So it appears like what's happening now is that Lisa's expressing non-duality to Ilangho, but
Yeah.
ultimately there's not a solid Ilangho or a solid Lisa here. There is appearances happening, giving the impression that there's two bodies speaking about non-duality. But it's not an actuality. The actuality is this, and this is totally non-describable, and it's happening and not happening, and it's nothing that we comprehend or understand. It's totally miraculous and free. It's only not free to a person in time. It's only not free to what we think we know about it. The person knows about it.
But a person always exists in time, isn't it? I mean, that's
Yeah.
what you've been telling.
Yeah.
So the timeless, now the person cannot exist.
No.
Then from my end, who's actually understanding all these things? If there is nobody here also.
Being.
Pardon?
Being. Being, which is nothing and everything. Being. Aliveness, which is nothing and everything. It's not a thing. It's not of this world, yet it's everything in this world. It's not Ilangho listening, it never has been. There's not an Ilangho there. There's not a solid Ilangho there.
Then who's listening?
Being. B-E-I-N-G.
Or otherwise called as God?
Yes.
So God is listening. Then after the talk, when this body mind has its own routine life, when issues happen, is it that God is having all the problems in life?
Yes.
Issues?
But the way that God has the problems in his life is it creates the appearance of Ilangho that feels like he's real and feels like he's got problems. That's the way God creates it in order to have this human experience. But God has no problems because God has no quality, but yet is every quality. To God, this is totally free and it's gone as soon as it's appeared. It's a totally creative and artistic expression.
So the God creates a robotic toy called as Ilangho and plays with it.
But he creates it out of himself. He creates everything. It's not even he, it creates everything. So the robotic Ilangho, every ounce of it is made of God. But then God also creates the feelings that that Ilangho is a separate person, and Ilangho is having a separate experience from everything else. And then the suffering begins, because then Ilangho feels abandoned and alone, and feels that pleasure is the only source of happiness. That pleasure is the only source of completion. And so he spends his whole life seeking for pleasure and putting so much emphasis on pleasure until he gets tighter and tighter and smaller, trying to seek for something that doesn't exist. But God doesn't mind, because God has no preference. God has no quality. So it accepts Ilangho totally as he is, and Ilangho suffering, and Ilangho feeling abandoned, and Ilangho getting smaller and smaller and tighter. God accepts everything because it has no quality. It's everything and nothing. There's nothing which could reject Ilangho. There's nothing that could abandon Ilangho. Every action of Ilangho was always supported and part of this, part of God.
And the false I has also been created by God. The energetic contraction.
Yes. Everything has. And it's God experiencing now, it's God looking now, but not as a person. Not as something. Something is already a form. There's nothing in everything.
And when this energetic contraction goes away, we call that as enlightenment.
Yes, that's what we call enlightenment, but it's not for anyone.
Yeah. It's the death of the person in time.
Yeah. And it's such a sweet thing, because if we speed up, if we go as fast as light, then everything disappears. So we become enlightened, we become still.
Once again, I mean, that's physics. When you go to the speed of light, actually everything stops. And that's a physics statement, right?
Yeah.
But you're bringing it to non-duality. Could you just, I mean, like, sort of give us the link?
Oh,
I understand in physics that when you travel at the speed of light, everything becomes still.
yeah.
But how does it transfer into non-dual?
Just that we describe it as enlightenment, we become light.
Correct.
So it becomes total stillness. We believe this world is really real, and it's really moving, and it's really happening, where actually there's nothing happening. The nature of everything is still. It just seems to be happening. But it's a trick.
And this energetic contraction drops by itself. It cannot be done by anybody or by...
There isn't anybody.
By a technique.
There isn't anybody. Techniques can happen, doing can happen, and all of that's welcome, but there isn't anybody that could do anything. There isn't anyone that could follow a technique. In each moment, that creation of the illusion is totally fresh.
So even the Buddha was enlightened without his own volition. Was it so?
Yes.
Then what was he talking about? Just a second, let me rephrase the question. It is not only to Buddha, but to all teachers, or even you who say that you are not a thing. Then there is a teaching coming through.
Yeah.
From the Buddha to Adi Shankara to you, through you, there is some sort of a communication happening, but you had said that it is an apparent communication. If the Buddha was enlightened without his own volition, if Lisa Cairns was enlightened without her own methodology or technique, then what is happening after the enlightenment in the lives of Buddha and Lisa Cairns?
That it's no longer somebody doing it, it's just expression happening.
So actually this is just a firework of sound.
Yeah.
Having no meaning.
No, but it seems to have meaning, but it's perfect play of things. The perfect play. The perfect expression of fireworks.
Even in the beginning of this session, you have said it apparently appears to be seeming like there is a message.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is there a message or not? If I'm going to ask you a yes or no question. Hello?
Hello. I'm
Yeah.
just seeing what comes.
You said it seems like a message.
Yeah.
So should we take it there is a message? Hello?
But who's the message for? Who's hearing this message? A message makes it sound like it's for someone, makes it sound like I'm speaking to you.
Yeah.
There seems to be a speaking about non-duality here, which is really beautiful, and that's what happens here, but it's not really set up like that I'm liberating something. It's just expression happening, and these bodies now have to have the expression of listening to non-duality, and this body has to have the expression of speaking it, but it's not really happening for anyone. It's an expression, like the swirls in the water or the ocean.
So this is not the false I speaking at all, is it?
Which false eye?
For example, from my side, I am not enlightened, so I have a thought coming up and saying, I listen to Lisa Cairns.
Yeah.
That's a false I, right?
Yeah.
That's the person, which you don't have.
No. But it's not that I don't have it in a way that doesn't make sense. But there's not a person speaking here, but it's not something that somebody has. This is stillness speaking, but it's not something that somebody could have.
Let me rephrase it. I can tell that maybe 5 years ago, this body mind had that false I.
Yeah. But all of that's like that. All of that is in and out of storylines. The only thing that really can be expressed is who's speaking now, and it's not a character speaking. There's not a Lisa here speaking. This is not coming from somebody.
Okay, it is coming from nobody, but who's listening here? I have a character.
You think there is this dynamic playing which gives the appearance that.
So it apparently appears there is a nobody speaking to somebody here who thinks there is a somebody, but actually here there is also a nobody.
No, yes. It just feels like somebody is there.
So a thought comes up and then says a certain character is listening to Lisa Cairns.
Sorry?
That's how it goes?
It feels like somebody's listening to Lisa Cairns, but there's nobody listening to Lisa Cairns. That is not who you are.
There is nothing listening to nothing.
Yes. Or everything. Or you could say everything's listening to everything.
Fine. Nothing, everything is listening to nothing, everything by means of a non-message.
It's not quite as black and white as that.
I understand. But the problem with people like us is that later on the thought comes up and the story goes in la la land and we have our own folders and they link up and then the pleasure pain principle starts working.
Yeah.
And that is created by.
It could be very uncomfortable, yeah.
So you had said that maybe psychologically you can start relaxing it, but still you are in a cage.
Yeah, but there can be ways to relax it. Even listening to non-duality can be relaxing to discover that you're not the person doing your actions. But there could be lots of physical therapies that could help relax that tension or give the effect of relaxing that tension. I'm not really a fan of Western psychology, but but having a broader perspective, learning about the programming of a human being. Like people take it so personally that each individual body is programmed towards pleasure. And we take that so personally. Why didn't he think of me? Why am I not the most important person to him? Because each body's programmed to go towards pleasure. So there can be things that could be learned that will relax that and make life a lot easier. Because when you believe you're separate, it goes into so many neurotic and hateful thought patterns. It really goes into a lot of bizarre thought patterns of whose fault it is and why he did this and why he did that. And ultimately, it's because there's a false assumption that you exist. But in that, there could be a relaxing of it. There could be a learning how to deal with it.
But still you're in the cage.
Yes, but it will be a lot better. A lot happier.
Yeah, but then you can't do it. You means I can't do it. It has to happen.
It has to happen. But normally once the idea gets presented, it normally goes ahead and happens. So if I said to you, pass the salt, normally the body passes the salt. So if I were to say, you know, you could relax yourself, then the body might go and investigate some of the things that were suggested here. But it's not freedom, it's not what's being talked about in that. It's just talking about relaxing. And there's nothing wrong with relaxing the person. I'm totally not against that. But that's got nothing to do with non-duality. But a lot of people that are into non-duality, really, that's all they want, is just a bit of a happier life. And looking to non-duality won't give that. It might relax the person a bit, but there's other ways that are maybe more functional and easy. Like I met a girl recently that had trouble swallowing and had problems eating, and she began to do work with Byron Katie, and a lot of that really relaxed and helped her as a person. It helped her regain new conditioning and not get so panicked by food. But it's not that there's actually somebody in there, but it's like, you know, it's the same as when the leg is broken, a cast gets put on. When the psychology goes crazy, then a cast is presented. I don't mean a cast, but I mean like there's something which can help improve that. But that's not non-duality, and a lot of people come to non-duality to try and do that. And a lot of speakers speak about both at the same time. They talk about psychology and non-duality, and I'm not criticizing that. But a lot of people mix up the two and think that enlightenment is something to do with the person and the character.
What you have just now spoken apparently appears to contradict the statement that we had made, that, you know, what's happening is destiny, and even whatever you say through anything cannot act on what's happening.
No.
There is no freedom.
No. There is no what?
No freedom.
No.
So when we suggest something to somebody, unless it is there in the script, it will not happen.
No, it won't. But if we were sitting around a table, Ilangho, and I said to you, Ilangho, could you pass me the salt? There's a good chance that will happen.
Only
if I said to you, if I suggested that your character might become, might be more happy by doing, say, work of Byron Katie, then there's a good chance it'll happen. Not because it's anybody's free will, not because it's not to do with it being one script and there's only one way it can go. It's just the functioning of it. Humans have this apparent conversation going back and forth. It doesn't mean because I say to you, can you pass the salt, and you pass me the salt, that there's free will. It's just the play acting its way out. Like in a film, one character says, shall we go and sit down? And they both go and sit down. It's all in the script. It's the way that humans communicate. And if I said to you, could you pass me the dog lead? You'd go and find the dog lead. Or if I said, could you move that table? You'd move the table. Not because there's independence or free will, or that it's not all written, but because that's how humans communicate. That's the flow of them. So like when you're learning to be a doctor, you have to read these books. And if you're in surgery, you'd have to say, can you pass me this tool or put on more light? And then it most of the time happens, but not always.
But the bottom line is, there is no free will.
No. That is not somebody that says, can you pass me the salt? That is a functioning appearing, like the light appears, like the sun shines, like the tree blows in the wind.
you had said today to one of the persons who had spoken that I don't believe that a person wants to die
Yeah.
in enlightenment.
No. The person always wants a thing, and enlightenment is no thing. So the person always wants an object, it wants a state, it wants something that it can see and know. It doesn't want nothing.
Yeah, but when I speak to you, who's speaking? It's not the person speaking, right?
No.
So when I say that I want enlightenment, that's sort of
That's nothing
come,
speaking through a filter
come,
of somebody. That's
comes
nothing speaking through a filter of Ilangho, and the Ilangho wants something. But really, your nature wants nothing. Your nature is totally free.
then why is it blabbering like this?
Because that's what beingness does, is it expresses in many different ways.
So the filter corrupts it.
Yes, but the filter is also the divine. It is also God.
Yeah, but then for you the filter went off.
The energy moved from being that to nothing, to beingness, to stillness. But I can't
And
talk about it in time. If I talk about it in time, I'm going into storylines. I can only talk about this. Here, there is not someone speaking to you. Like, to say the filter went off is to believe that I'm something moving in time again. It's really a weird thing.
yeah, I understand that. In one of your talks, and I think somewhere in 2011, and on the YouTube, there was a Eastern European language below. I think it is Polish or something. I couldn't understand. But you had spoken about the end of suffering by Buddha.
Yeah.
That's what enlightenment is all about, or non-dual teaching is all about. Somewhere on those lines. Am I right?
I said what, sorry?
You said something which resonated with what the Buddha's teaching was. About 20 years ago, when I started hearing about the Buddha, and he was keeping on talking about suffering, suffering, and stopping the suffering in human life, I thought, what is this person talking like? And other big teachers were talking about enlightenment being in a state of 24 into 7, 365 bliss, and becoming everything. Buddha keeps on talking about the end of suffering. You spoke on that talk about the end of suffering. Do they both tally? Enlightenment.
To me, enlightenment is the end of suffering, which is not a thing, it's an absence of an illusion. People that are speaking about bliss and high experiences are still talking about a thing to me, and so no, it's not the same thing. They're still talking about a state.
Correct.
They're still talking about something in this world. But the Buddha got very not corrupted, that's such a harsh word, but corrupted by being written down many a times. So I can really hear non-duality in Buddhism, but when you look at it as a whole, there's so much dogma in it. But you can, like, the Heart Sutra is a good example of non-duality. And there's certain, the Heart Sutra.
What was that?
Well, I used to be able to recite it, but I can't anymore. Let me have it.
Okay.
I still have it in my documents. I love it, so I keep it. Just let me find it.
Is it in your book?
No, I don't think it is. Well, maybe you can look it up. It's lots of different translations of it again. But also the way that the Buddha talked about suffering as well.
Yeah.
Like the recognition that this is suffering. As a person, it is suffering. To believe this is happening to you, that is suffering. But then there's lots of other things that it goes into, but it is suffering when you think that you're separate from life and that you're having an experience in time.
So according to you, liberation can also be relabeled as end of suffering.
Yeah, it's not an experience. It's an absence.
Absence of suffering.
Yeah, but that absence can bring lots of experiences, like lots of bliss and all these different things, but all of those experiences come and go. That's not it. That's a side effect.
And in some of your earlier videos I was watching, you were using the Namaste, the sign,
Yeah.
the Indian, but nowadays you don't use it, right?
Yeah, I think that's was just the conditioning of this body. There'd been a lot of time spent in India, and now there hasn't been much spent in India the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
In my 20s, there's a lot of time spent in India.
Or was it the influence of people around you at that point in time?
Sorry?
Was it the influence of certain teachers or people?
Yeah, Ramesh, Balsakar, and just spending time in India, you just get used to doing that.
You know, what I'm looking at is the last couple of years. Is it that your state of whatever you are is you're totally off all those orthodox teachings and
Yeah, it could have
just
been, yeah. Could have been a moving away from all of that and any ideas that were left disappearing that are related to any spiritual thing or any experience. But there wouldn't be a noticing of that because the noticing of that is always for a person.
we just again, if I am not persistent, just expand on this phrase you've been using today. Seems like a message.
Yeah.
You don't say it is a message, but you say it seems like a message, what you're talking to us.
Well, yeah, could be. It seems like Lisa's talking about non-duality. It seems like two people are talking here, but really this is stillness.
And this false I has to drop by itself, with the God willing.
Everything's always happened by itself. This has always been the work of God. Everything.
So your famous statements of doing happens, nothing born, nothing dies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When we go to a funeral, we see a body dead.
Yes.
Dead be there.
Yeah. But that's only our label of it. We actually don't know what dead is. It's just a form changing into another form. We call dead the absence of the movement of the body. But actually, if you look inside the body, it's still moving. It's still changing.
What about childbirth? When I started listening to your talks, the main things which really hit me like a hammer was doing happens, nothing born, nothing dies, there is no you.
Mm-hmm.
With that as a sort of a prologue, I see a person dying in front of me, and another place, you see a child being born from the womb of a mother.
Yeah.
And I have also undergone that in my life, the birth part of it.
Yeah.
But you say nothing is born.
No.
So when a baby is born, what happens? There is just a transformation of energy.
Uh-huh.
When a baby is born,
Yes.
there is no birth of a child then.
Well, it's what we call it in our society, but no. There's a movement of energy that's happened from one
And
thing
that
to another.
And that movement of energy is labeled as a child.
Yes.
So there is no separate entity as a baby.
No. But it's a mystery. It's a total mystery, actually, what it is. But it's time to end Ilangho home. It's now 10 past 10 or 5 past 10.
Yes.
But lovely to talk with you as always.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ilangho. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So thanks, guys. Lovely to speak with everybody.